Our first mission as a combat crew was flown in the 2nd of March in 45, and we boarded an airplane called Ronnie, a B-24 called Ronnie, and this airplane was a legend in its own right. Ronnie was the oldest airplane in the group. It had flown over 102 missions. The plane had been patched, repatched, repaired, overhauled, and probably was just short of being remanufactured. This aircraft was destined to give us a very small footnote in the history of the 446th. But the group did have a distinction or an honor or something along that line that not very many people in the that flew in the 8th Air Force can claim record to, and that is we shot down our commanding officer. Our commanding officer was flying a Mosquito bomber, and it was a Mosquito bomber, that one that he was flying, was a reconnaissance aircraft, and the guns were stripped and the bombs were stripped, and he had cameras and all kinds of equipment, but nothing for fighting purposes, just to go out, look and see what the weather was, and maybe the enemy aircraft fire and all that kind of stuff. And so he was coming back from his reconnaissance, and at that time the formation was attacked by the Me-262s. Now let me tell you about the Me-262. It was a German jet that was introduced late in the war, and it outflew any of our fighter airplanes. And had the Germans decided to build that particular airplane in quantity, it might, as far as the air war is concerned, it certainly might have changed the outcome of the air war. But at this particular point, the 6 airplanes, 6 MiG-262s attacked, and Crawford called into the formation leader and tell him he was joining the formation for protection from the 262s. Word was passed down the group, but in the heat of battle, why our gunners, the 446 gunners, got two 262s, but they also shot down the Mosquito. When last seen, Crawford was heading for our cloud deck below with his right engine feathered, and smoke was coming out, and that's the last we saw of the colonel because he got in the clouds. But a couple of weeks later, the colonel and the co-pilot came back to the group, and the colonel never flew another reconnaissance mission as long as he was over there.
That was about the frag bomb. That was about the frag bomb.
Oh, okay. Now this is where the frag bombs come in. They were bombs that dropped from the airplane, and as they got near the ground, why they exploded all over and threw pieces of shrapnel all over the place. Unfortunately, on this day, they exploded prematurely, and they threw all the damn frag back up into the airplane. Lieutenant Peacock landed at a place called Manstrom Airdrome, and there were 2 or 3 of these airdromes that were 10 football fields long, and they had emergency equipment and fire equipment and everything else, so if the aircraft was badly damaged, why they could do what they needed to do. And then here is where I get a little perturbed. It says the navigator the radio operator, and the tail gunner bailed out through the escape hatch in the waist at 3,000 feet over the field. Now, I'd like to take a little bit of time and tell you what actually happened, because that looks like, you know, these guys didn't have the guts to stay with the airplane and land. It's true that the bombs, the frags exploded prematurely. Luckily, none of the crew was injured. The pilot dropped out of the formation because he had trouble controlling the airplane with the rudders. And also his number 3 engine was running rough. So we were flying home alone, and as a navigator, I told the pilot that he fly heading umpty hump and so forth. And lo and behold, my pilot again was showing his passion for the radio compass. And the Germans were very good at, and they had ground stations which had bomber frequencies. They also had ground stations which had the frequency of the stations in England. And my pilot tuned in, and he saw the needle go right to that particular station, and he just followed that little needle, and I let him fly about 5 minutes. And then I called the pilot on the intercom, and I said to him, hey, if you continue on this heading, why then what's going to happen is we'll wind up in the North Sea, or maybe if we're lucky, we'll wind up in Sweden. So the pilot did change the heading, and we finally got back to England. But in the course of it, when we were flying back, in the course of it, the radio operator said, I'd like to bail out, because I had bailed out the previous week with another crew that he was flying with, and so there was an exchange of opinions among the whole crew, and finally I said, let's vote on the issue, and the pilot and the 2 waist gunners and the nose gunner voted to land. And the co-pilot, the navigator, and the engineer, and the radio operator, and the tail gunner voted to bail out. And the co-pilot, the pilot said, the co-pilot, you can't go. And the engineer, he said, you can't go. And so they stayed with the airplane, and we did jump out over the field at 3,000 feet. In closing, I'd like to make this comment. I was recalled as a navigator for the Korean War, and luckily my congresswoman was able to get me into the pilot training program, and I went to Korea as a pilot, and I was flying a T-6 airplane, which had the pilot in the front and the observer in the back. And we were forward air controllers, putting in strikes with the jets from above. But the point was, I was in charge of the radio compass, and there was no navigator in the back that was interrupting my flying. Thank you.
Okay, Bill, thanks much. You stayed away from frag bombs after that, right?
You bet.